My guest today is filmmaker Mekhai Lee, and he acted in many professional productions, including Broadway's The Color Purple. And he is the writer, director, and co creator of an original web series entitled For the Boys to Much Acclaim. He is also a member of the Half Initiative Director Program and is the 2022 Director's Fellow on HBO's Succession. Now, Mekhai also wrote and directed his current short film, Them That's Not, which premiered at Newfest Pride 25 Film Festival and has since screened at numerous film festivals around the world, including Bushwick and the Chicago International Film Festival, where it was the recipient of the Golden Hugo Award, making the film official Academy Award eligible for 2027. Now, he is
Hmm.
also one of 6 directing recipients of the NAACP 2025 Cinematic Shorts Competition, and today we are discussing his brand new short film, Them That's Not, which is about a prison furlough that brings an estranged father and his distant daughter together at their mother's repast. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome filmmaker Mekhai Lee to the show. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. What an introduction. Wow. It's so crazy to hear all of your stats read out to you, but really
Well,
cool to
you
be here.
you got a great resume, but even more than that, you have created a very beautiful story on film. And is this based
Thank
on
you.
true events?
Yeah, it's a personal experience that I was going through in the summer of 2024. So this is definitely something that came from a true and authentic place.
Wow. So tell me how it all came about for you to write the script and put it on film.
Yeah, totally. So I had this opportunity presented to me by the Newfest Film Festival. They were doing a partnership with Concord Originals called the Sound and Scene program. Essentially, what the program initiative is that they give various filmmakers songs, the complete rights to songs to sort of build a story around. And I had already been working on another script that I was going to apply with, but the whole point of the initiative is original content, original ideas. So I had actually lost a maternal figure in my life, a grandmother, at the time that the opportunity had been presented to me. And long story short, I was taking everything I was going through with losing her and applying it to what I could, like, essentially transmutating the pain I was feeling into something more cathartic, bringing the art out of it, so that I could have some sort of healing process in creating and grieving my loss. So that's where the script writing came. That's where the inception for the idea sort of began, and it's taken on a life of its own at this point. So
This is a story of love, redemption,
definitely.
forgiveness, and most of all, understanding, correct?
Yes, yeah, I would say all of those things for sure. And also just a clear reminder that those that you may not count on are sometimes the people who are showing up for you the most in your life, the
Yeah.
folks we forget about often. So,
Well,
yeah.
the main character is Drea.
hmm
Why did you want to create a deaf character to lead this story?
Oh, yeah. I think it had a lot to do with my own experience sort of growing up in my family, feeling like an artist in a family of not so many artists, or feeling like a queer person in a heteronormative family, often not really feeling seen or not really having the same language as the people I was around, people who loved me, people who weren't necessarily bad people, not bad people at all, and who wanted to understand me, but really didn't have the tools and language to do so. And I thought that was a really cool connective tissue with being hard of hearing in a not in a hearing family. Um, and then there was also the grief that I was feeling when I lost my grandmother, and being around a lot of family members who were close to her or not as close to her and weren't exactly feeling the same amount of grief that I had been feeling. And also in other instances, when I would lose family members, I would be at these repasses, these funerals, and not be grieving as hard. It sort of feel like a family reunion, and the folks who had lost someone would be there much more desolate, much more in despair than I had felt. So I thought there was a cool way to sort of get immersive, create an immersive experience, because grief is such a universal thing, as is love. And I like the dichotomy of those two emotions and sort of bringing that together through the cinematic medium felt like the perfect vehicle to sort of bring this cathartic piece to life. So,
I like the way that you use silence with a bit of white noise, almost the sound of
mm,
blood going through one's ears, especially in
mm,
Drea, to emphasize thought and separation. And
hmm
because she has to grasp words in a much different way. So I like that you made her a creative writer, which further
hmm
emphasizes another avenue for her voice to be heard.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I honestly don't even feel like the intention was there in the inception of it. I think I was just adding personal things that I felt to this character, you know? I was only writing it, in a lot of ways, this film felt like a diary entry because it was a way for me to sort of like come to terms with my own emotional state, you know? So her being a creative writer was because I'm a creative myself. I'm an artist, I'm a filmmaker. There was a way for me to sort of get inside of her head without doing too much work, you know? It just felt like a natural progression to make her that. Um, but I do see the merit of the idea of language sort of being this conduit that everybody's working through, and who has more access to it, who doesn't, or who has access to versions of it. She lives on the page where most people live in thought and spoken word. So I do like that. It's not something I thought about in the beginning, but I like that it's become a part of it.
Well, it's a very, very major part of this whole story, and because
Definitely.
it's right out front, and it
Hmm.
just makes the story that much more intriguing and also more focused. So you have two characters. You have Carol, which I assume is Drea's aunt, and then Drea's
That's
father,
right.
Samuel. So
Hmm.
Carol is the practical one, in which she told Drea that poetry isn't actually a profession in which you can earn a respectable living from. But then it was
Hmm.
Drea's father, Samuel, on the other hand, who balances that thought process, or that nurturing thought, that even in the midst of his mistakes, he supports his daughter's dream of being a writer.
Hmm.
Why was this contrast so important in the film?
It's something that I had experienced firsthand. I don't want to say that I have family members who are less than supportive because that's not true. Like I do feel like a lot of my family has been extremely supportive of my artistic pursuits, but I also know what it is to have families who are victims of the prison industrial complex, and close family members of mine whom I speak to often and remember feeling sort of lost in my early pursuits of my dreams. And I remember distinctly being told by a person in my family, my father, actually, this story is incredibly personal. And he made it very clear to me that he sees pride in the fact that I'm able to be a person on the outside, sort of existing in my own desires. I'm not a prison of, I mean, I'm not in any prison of any sort. Like I can be as free as I want to be, and he finds the connection there in me. It gives him a reason to sort of wake up every morning, even though he's behind bars. So it was something that I thought was just really poetic and touching and a reminder for me constantly. And I thought that would be sort of helpful in the long run when people or audiences and other artists came into contact with this story. Again, making it this immersive experience where artists could see themselves in Drea and be reminded that your pursuit of something larger than yourself is the most important thing to sort of go after.
Yeah, there's that scene of the living room, and
Hmm.
you have Samuel placed in the shot. He's placed in the very back. He's in front of the window, in
Yeah.
front of the curtains. He's behind two people. They're sitting in their chairs, and then there's we'll just call it the end table that is between the two chairs. So he's literally standing behind that. And at first, I
Hmm.
thought that's a really odd place to be standing, but from from what I assume from a filmmaker's point of view, it's separating him because he's coming in off of a prison furlough. So,
Hmm.
in a way, his mistakes that put him there is a separation to the rest of the family. But I like the way that Carol comes in. So when they start doing this, the dancing to the music, she
Yeah.
grabs him to bring him into the element of the dancing. But it's really bringing him in like Samuel. You're a part of this family.
Yeah.
What, regardless of the mistakes, we love you, we accept you. Then you have Drea, where her separation with the others is partly due to her deafness. And so she's struggling with trying to understand the conversations that other people are saying. I love the way when if someone's head is turned to the side, she's having a difficult time to understand because she can read lips.
Sure.
So I love
Hmm.
the separation between the two characters in their own worlds in which you kind of bring them together.
Yeah, I like that direct contrast as well, because without realizing it, Drea and Samuel operate in same occupy the same spaces to this family. You know, this family is a very tight-knit unit. And here they are as outliers to this for various reasons. His is being a prison to an actual prison, and hers being stuck in a language, or not even stuck, occupying in a space, speaking a language that her family does not have access to, you know? So them being the same sort of playing in the same sort of playing field allowed them to find connective tissue with each other, you know?
Yeah, and and I want to talk about because I noticed this a lot in this film.
Hmm.
I want to talk about the different variations of framing that you use to tell the story.
Yeah.
The first one I really notice is when you have Drea sitting in the rocking chair on her left. When you're watching the film, on the left is the lace curtains of the window,
Hmm.
and the
Hmm. Hmm.
rest is the rest of the room. So when I'm looking at that shot, and I'm like, okay, there's a separation between her and the world because of being deaf. But then she's within the home, and then to the right is the openness of the room, and then when Carol comes in and she's talking to her. I
Yeah.
love the way you framed that because to me it was very metaphoric to Drea's world, correct?
Definitely, definitely metaphoric. I think we wanted to isolate her in the frame very often, you know, show the beauty of the home, the community aspect of the home, whether it be represented in the people that occupied the space or just in the mise en scene and what we were actually seeing, you know, and placing her sort of to the left or to the right of every frame or directly center with nothing around her, isolated her from a visual standpoint, you know. And that was something I wanted to achieve with Samuel as well, but you'll notice that when Samuel's alone in the space or in a centralized figure in the space, you'll have characters around him because he's still surrounded by people. He still has access to the folks in that space in a way that Drea does not, you know. So I wanted to sort of show the oppositional forces at play there, even though they are essentially the same person or the same being in all of these environments. So,
Yeah, and there were other elements of framing in this film. You have the doorway. You
hmm,
have the
hmm,
separation between, I believe it's the dining room and the living room, especially when the two
hmm.
women were, in a way, they were standing there, they were gossiping, and
Yeah,
Drea was
I like to
behind them. They
call
didn't,
them.
yeah, and Drea was behind them, and they didn't know she was there. But even though she was deaf,
Mhm.
their reactions, because when I noticed the doorway, their
Hmm.
reactions were like, "Oh my gosh, I hope she didn't hear what we said."
Right,
But that was a normal thought of a person behind you, but they weren't thinking that really she may not have heard a word at all,
right.
even though she does have the earpieces in. So I
Hmm.
noticed that element. Then there was the kitchen framing where you have Drea and Carol together, very
Hmm.
close,
Very tight. Hmm.
very tight, as you said. And
Hmm.
then that's when I noticed. Did you frame this in a 4:3 ratio?
We sort of went in with that ratio in mind, and I think we got really lucky with our location, and that the kitchen was long and tight. You know, when I was writing it, there were other kitchens I had in mind, and I sort of was framing it in my head very differently. You know, but when we saw the actual place we'd be shooting in, that kitchen was so it forces you to sort of confront another person in the space with you. And so it just felt like a natural progression to have that scene be in that space. Whereas the scene initially where Carol and Drea speak to each other, um, in the sunroom, the first framing you were speaking about, that was also a scene written to be in the kitchen, but the space in that sunroom allowed for that sort of awkward energy to exist between the two actors. You know, they weren't even in the same frame until they come close to each other. They're not able to see eye to eye. It's been years since they've seen each other last, so it allowed the character to sort of inform the space, or rather, the space to inform the character, and allowed the act. Yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah, because of the fact that when in the sunroom,
Mhm.
it gave a bit of space and freedom for Drea because it's where you're bringing the story in where Carol is bringing the urn
Mhm.
to Drea, and so
Yeah.
that wouldn't, to me, that would have never worked in the kitchen because that is a very personal, private moment, and you don't want to be in someone's face at that moment. You want to kind of give them
Right.
space, which you did in the sunroom. But then when you had that shot in the kitchen, I noticed this very slight panning. I mean, and it was so slight, and then it stops because now we're
Mm.
focused. You make the audience, you make us focused
Mhm.
like Drea is focused because she's focusing on hear and reading lips.
That's
And
right.
so
Yeah.
you make us do the same thing and you really just place us in her shoes,
That was the
which
whole
go
Yeah, that
ahead.
was definitely the whole goal when it came to the immersive quality of the piece. And I'm glad you noticed that slow pan, because that was our approach from a visual place of the pulsing heartbeat that she was having. She was very nervous to have this conversation. She's also not completely comfortable in this environment with these people, even though they are her blood family. It was a way for us to sort of like add a visual element that really aided in her trepidation, you know, her heartbeat sort of quickening and loosening. It's something we did with the sound design in the sunroom scene, but it was a fun way to add that element without actually adding a heartbeat in post. You know what I mean? We wanted to see it visually. How can we put you in the mind? Another quality that I wanted to add to this film is that if you're watching this with no sound at all, I wanted to make a film where if I had completely taken the sound out, we completely relied on subtitles to tell this story, what visual elements would help translate this story or translate Drea's experience to make it that much more immersive, you know? So there's a cut out there where there's no sound at all. There's a cut where you hear everything, and then the cut we all have, the cut that's making the rounds where it's in and out of sound. You know, we sort of blend the worlds.
You know, you bring something up that I wish more filmmakers would do because there are times when I would watch a film.
Hmm.
I'll watch it all the way through. I'll watch it again. I'm breaking it down, but then something hits me and I go back and I'm like, okay, let me watch this film and just cut the sound off and watch it from beginning to end.
Hmm. Hmm.
Why I think an element like that is so important for a filmmaker is one of the things I noticed last year was with some films is that I believe some filmmakers forgot the element that the audience is watching this. You
Hmm.
want you want the audience to understand the story. Now, a lot of the audience is not going to sit there and they're not going to break down and understand the metaphors of a personal shot or dialogue, but you
Hmm.
want the audience to be immersed and understand the story. And in some cases, I believe filmmakers need to go back to their work, cut the sound off, and watch it, and or cut the sound off, show it to someone, and say, "Tell me what this story is about." If the person
Hmm.
can explain the story back to them and they get it right, then they
Hmm.
did their film right.
I
And
completely
you
agree.
you did this film right. And I've seen other films where there's a character that is either really deaf in real life,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
portraying one like Angel Theory did. And I have to tell you, Mackay, after I saw this film the first time, I literally sat here and I went, wow, what a way to kick off 2026 with a beautiful film. So I thank you for
Wow.
that.
Well, I thank you for that compliment. That means the world. And I do want to just point out that Angel is actually hard of hearing in real life too. So she was instrumental in teaching us explaining the authentic experience. I wouldn't have been able to capture it as deeply without Angel's input at all. Um, but I completely agree with you when it comes to like we operate in a medium of visuals. We operate in a medium of photography, you know? And I want to say that it was Scorsese who said that he watches films in silence to be able to capture a story or his own or other people's films. Like you said, to see, can I watch this in just pictures and still get the themes of it, the story of it, you know? And it's become a method I do in studying various scripts or writing my own things. One major inspiration for this film was Moonlight, and I would watch that film in silence while I'm reading along with the screenplay just to be able to what am I capturing here? What is Barry writing that he's doing without relying on the sound to tell that story, you know? It was
Well,
another
yeah, because some of my favorite films where there's no dialogue. And then some films I like
hmm.
where there's extreme minimal dialogue. And then sometimes the music score and the sound mixing is the major character to bring the other character, the actors, to life.
Right.
I
Yeah,
love films like that because they become very, you become very attached. There's an emotional element to that. So
completely.
what caught me off guard the first time, and then I figured it out, was when your film starts off, I was literally sitting here going, "Do I have my sound on?" and
Yeah,
then and then
I've heard that.
then you surprise us when Carol comes up behind Daedra, and then I went,
Hmm.
uh, "Yeah, I mean Drea,"
Hmm.
and I was like, "Oh." So I went back and started over again so I could get back to get into the flow. And so I love that. But
Yeah.
then it was that again, that sunroom scene. And
Hmm.
that's when I'm hearing the sound and I'm like, that's not a heartbeat. Because I heard what you said. I said, that's not a
Hmm.
heartbeat. That's almost like if you were in a room so quiet that you could hear the blood flowing through your ears. That's what it sounded
That's
like.
right.
And I
Yeah.
loved that element.
Thank
That is
you.
a
Thank you.
filmmaker paying attention to the absolute minute detail to tell a
Hmm.
story. It was brilliant, brother. Brilliant.
I appreciate that so much. Yeah, that was exactly the place I operated from. I wanted to get down to the granular level of how I could tell this story, you know? And so I'm so happy to hear that it is translating. That was one of the main things at the first screening of it I was nervous about is that are people getting this? Is the story, communicating my intent, especially in those moments of silence, you can hear a pin drop in this massive theater. And we're used to big, large movies, Nolan and Coogler, and, we're used to the sound knocking us over. You go see something like Dune and you're seeing it in IMAX and your seats are shaking, So here I have this like literally quiet movie, this silent film here and there. And I was wondering if my audience was still along for the ride, So it's really affirming to hear that people are getting that story, even though I'm not relying on like the tricks and of the trade,
Yeah,
So
well, oh no, I get it. But I'm going to ask you something because there's an element in this film, and I kept looking at it. I kept looking at it. I'm like, okay, I know it's there for a reason.
mm-hmm.
There's a painting on the table in her late mother's room, or maybe it was in her grandmother's room.
That's right. Yeah.
When I saw it, to
Hmm.
me, it showed those two circles on the side of a woman. And again, I'm looking, okay, this is emphasizing the framing of your film, but
Hmm.
also showing a woman that is emerging from the shadow into the sun. And I'm thinking, because of Samuel's monologue, and here's this painting off to the side behind him. And as
Hmm.
he's talking, I'm looking at the painting, listening to him, and I'm thinking, that woman that is emerging from the shadow into the sun is Drea.
Correct. Correct. And I gotta be honest, you're the first person to notice that. That is something, yeah, that's something that was so intentional. And I thought it was just a little detail for me, and it's something I explained to Angel as well. And that little signature on the painting, Lucky, that's Angel's grandmother. That was her nickname. And she actually had passed on. So that was something that Angel added as a sort of additive to the day we were shooting. On the day, she was like, "Can I just sign this way?" And I remember that day was such a rush. We were like trying to get the lighting right and making sure that the framing felt correct, and we were getting the entire room and the production design, and we were running out of time. So that scene ended up becoming my favorite because on the fly, at this point, we're 3 days into shooting, and this team has come together, and we are all speaking the same language, and that scene doesn't have subtitles in real life, and it was shot completely in silence. So one moment that I knew that this film was working was when we're watching Samuel sign to his daughter, and people are getting teary-eyed. The entire crew is sort of really in this moment. It was a transcendent experience because it goes to show that language is universal, or the art is universal. These feelings that we feel, these experiences that we have, it was translating, even though no one but maybe save like 5 or 6 people could sign on set. This is a easily 18, 19 person crew completely immersed in this scene, so I'm so glad that that's translating, and I'm so glad you caught that painting. That's exactly right.
Well,
That was the point.
you know, I've learned I've learned that film directors place things in a scene for a reason. They also
Yeah.
know that most of the time the audience is never going to catch it or understand it, but for the director, it's there it's really there for them, but
Yeah.
it's part
Yeah.
of the story, and if someone catches it, it's like awesome, and a lot of times people don't. And so
Hmm.
when Drea walked into the room, and I see this painting, and then and I'm just watching what's going on, and I'm like, that painting is there for a reason. So let's just
Hmm.
pause it and let me just stare at this painting and let's figure this out. And
Hmm.
so, but I had to keep playing the scene over between her and Samuel, and then that's when it was off to his when it was on his camera right, which is technically his left.
Hmm.
That's when and then when he started signing to her, that's when I figured it out.
Yeah, and his whole monologue about the fire, lighting that fire in yourself keeps that fire lit in me. And I'm paraphrasing, it's been a while since we shot it, but that whole idea of being lit, having this spark of inspiration, that's where the idea of the sun came from. And, we were inspired by the person who painted that was inspired by stuff we'd seen online and other artists that we love. And he painted this original piece for us. And I actually still have it because it's that meaningful, like, emblem from shooting this film. It's something that I can carry in real life. We have this virtual film that I can watch whenever I want, but I had this like emblematic piece of this film, that I carry with me through my life. So yeah, I'm so grateful you caught that. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Well, the painting is so beautiful that anyone can just stare at it and
Yeah, he did a
think
great
of
job.
things on their own. I'm almost wondering if you need to
Yeah.
make a bunch of prints and just sell them at all the film festivals in which your film will be shown at.
Maybe. Right. And on the exactly on the back it'll say, then that's not Sunday at 2.
Yeah, I mean, and of course it'd be a great fundraiser as well. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's the
Hmm.
painting I knew had a very central part of this story, but I also have to
Yeah.
say that I loved your choice of color palette because it was very
Mm.
warm, and that to me indicated family love and unity.
Yeah, completely. And actually, that's something my DP, Sade and Dia, suggested when we were in pre-production, and she was sort of pitching to me how she saw the film based upon what had been written. She really wanted to juxtapose how funerals or death had been represented in films that she'd seen, which is usually cool lighting and more despair that you're feeling. And that's not really something that in our culture we return to when people pass. It's all about uplifting the joy that they gave us, sort of carrying them with us into our lives as we move on. And so she wanted to represent that again from a visual standpoint. And I love the warm choices that she had. We had this chocolate filter she used for a lot of Drea's silent moments, but it ended up being something that, as I was editing, like the whole idea of how I was using sound completely shifted. So you'll find chocolate filter moments in moments where you are hearing sound, just because it's a beautiful moment or a beautiful picture. I really did enjoy the warmth that the film had. And in, coloring, we started in this cooler place, and as the film goes on, we just got warmer and warmer and warmer. And again, another suggestion from my DP was lighting the final scene by candlelight. So that warmth added such it had this like ancestral feel to it. That whole room was a really it felt like a brujeria is what I'm thinking of. It just felt like very, spiritual, Another director I love is Chloe Zhao, and she operates from this like beautiful heart space, and that is really what shooting that scene felt like, that it was all heart work and not just artwork. We were really in this emotive place, and we were sort of whispering to each other. It was just kind of like sacred, So I'm glad that the warmth is translating, and that warmth was intentional, and it permeated throughout our entire creative process. So
Well, where did you find the location? Because the interior shots, I mean, not just the shots, I'm just talking about the interior of that home. I loved it.
yeah, yeah. It's actually a location a friend of mine used for his short film a couple years ago, and I remember loving the brownstone in his movie. So I was like, "Hey, do you still have the contact for that location? It's in Harlem." I reached out to the folks who live there, and they were so sweet, so supportive. During the scene where they're doing the electric slide, they actually could hear us like partying, and they came upstairs and checked out the scenery, and just really enjoyed having everybody in the space. It's really wild to have that historic brownstone owned by the couple that did. They felt like a part of the family, or at least for me. I know people were in and out, and there was a lot of moving parts, but by the end of the weekend, we really did feel like a lot closer to them, and I felt like they had seen a part of me that they didn't get upon first meet. So it was really cool to be able to shoot and be in that space with them and have that historic sort of sense built into the literal walls of the piece. So
Well, it played so well into the story. And so
thanks. Thank you.
yeah, so I love the location, but how did you come to cast your film? Because Angel Theory did a wonderful job, but all
She's
the other
wonderful. Yeah.
actors were very impressive as well. I mean, I was watching their movements, their delivery of dialogue was so natural, not
Hmm.
forced, very genuine. And then you
Yeah.
also brought up the fact of the sign language. So, did the actors already know how to sign?
Yeah, there's a few answers to that question. So Angel actually came about by a friend of mine, Mars Rucker, who's actually in the movie. They play one of Angel's cousins. And Mars was doing a show in LA with Deaf West, and I was looking for actors to play Drea's role that already knew sign language and actually lived the deaf experience. Like that was a big requirement for me. So with that prerequisite, Mars already being around a lot of deaf performers started sending me folks that that they thought would fit the right mold for what I was going for. And Angel and I hopped on a Zoom, I want to say maybe 6 to 8 months before we started shooting. And the moment I started speaking to them, I knew that they were perfect for the role. I was like, Angel has to play this. You know, I started to shape Drea around Angel's personalities and her little quips and things like that. I would really get an idea of like, oh, this is how Drea would say this, you know. There were moments that Drea was less confrontational, you know, and Angel was like, if this were me, a perfect moment, if this were me, I'd take my earpiece out. I don't want to hear this anymore. So that was something Angel did in the moment. Like I wouldn't even respond. Like there was more dialogue to come, and Angel was like, I would literally just shut down and remove myself from this. And I
Oh,
thought
that's
that
the
was a
kitchen
much
scene.
yeah, definitely. And I thought it was just a much more interesting choice, you know? So Angel really, again, shaped this role. It was like we collabed on what Drea could be, and I'm forever indebted to her for it. And everyone else I found, I used to be in theater, so I know a lot of actors, you know. Aunt Carol is actually, she was in the production of The Color Purple with me. She played Sophia, and I've always loved her acting. I've always wanted to work with her again. And when I was writing this, I knew she was the perfect person. She was the only person I had in mind as I was writing. She's a brilliant, brilliant actress, lovely, lovely, sweet woman, extremely supportive, almost like a maternal figure to me. So I was happy to have her be a part of this. And hearing her hum, you know, she's a brilliant singer as well. Hearing her hum songs on the side while we were prepping shoots was the highlights of my day sometimes. So incredibly grateful to her for that. My two aunties, my gossiping aunties, Britt West, another person who was in The Color Purple with me, Khadijah, my a good friend, actress that we came up at the same time, you know, and I hit her up knowing that I wanted her to be just on set, and then it worked out that somebody couldn't do the role, and I was like, why am I not just asking my friend who is a great actress? And then Khadijah ended up doing it. Lovely job. Biko is someone I saw off Broadway. I saw him in a production of oh, I'm blanking on the production's name right now, but it was a brilliant production at MTC, and Biko was a teacher in it, and I thought he had this really calm, paternal energy to him. You know, he was soft while being masculine. He had this like very resolute talent. It was just very clear, you know, and I could feel his work ethic in watching him. And so this is a man who had no knowledge of sign language before he started working on this, and we sent him the dialogue maybe 3 or 4 months before we started shooting, and he practiced it daily. And when he got there, he knew it. He had it down pat. It was perfect, you know. And I had been learning sign language too, so of course I'm checking on monitor and in person. I'm looking to see if he's signing it correctly, and he totally was. He did a great job. I'm grateful to all the talent that I had. It was a mix of actors that I'd known or worked with, and literal family. Some of the people dancing on that screen are cousins and aunties and friends of mine who have never been on screen before, are just literally related to me. So it felt like a very family affair, to quote Sly and the Family Stone. It just felt like a communal effort. So
Well, it, perfect casting, perfect
thank
casting
you,
in this
thank you.
film. I loved every character, regardless if their parts were small or large, because I watched
Yeah.
every single one and I'm like, it's just so fluid. It's so natural. It's almost like I wanted to see all of these actors more,
Hmm.
even in even whatever productions that they are going to star in after this film.
Yeah.
I want to see
Yeah.
more of their work. They're all so great. And I know
They
we
are.
talked about a bit of the sound mixing, but
Hmm.
how do you create and work for how do you how d- let me get this worded right.
Hmm.
When you're working with a when your main character is deaf,
Hmm.
how difficult is it to create the sound mixing and to be a major part in telling the story?
I would say Angel's really good at reading lips, as is Drea. So a lot of Drea's experience again came from Angel. And if I had any questions, I was lucky enough to be able to consult Angel, but I also had a director of artistic sign language on set, Alexandria Wales. Alexandria has worked and starred in various productions in New York. She was in the recent revival of For Colored Girls, and was also the director of artistic sign language for that production. And I mean, so lucky to get her. She was perfect at her job. And we also had interpreters and folks who could translate on set for us. And Alexandria was insurmountable in what she was able to provide as far as keeping it authentic, keeping the language fluid, and just so great to be around, really funny woman. So I was happy to be able to, not lose not lose sight of language when I was consulting them, or even when I would watch interactions that I wasn't a part of on set. Like folks were just willing to learn. I think everyone was excited to be able to learn how to say toilet or something, just various signs that we had to know in order to communicate effectively. Um, we had an all staff, like all crew meeting maybe 2 or 3 days before we started shooting, just to sort of get the pleasantries out of the way, and establish the kind of set that we would be working on. We wanted to make sure that there was diversity, equity, inclusion at the front, as a foremarker of what we were trying to do. So it made everyone understand the nature of what we were going for, and allow a lot of give and take when it came to making mistakes or not being able to really understand someone. People were patient, people were gracious, so I'm grateful for that, and that really served what ended up being on screen, what you ended up seeing, because there was that communal effort. It really did feel like we were all just in it together, working on it together, Um, and then in the post process, it's interesting because Angel actually put her hearing aid in my ear so that I could get an experience of what she's hearing. And you'd be surprised at how much we take for granted, being folks who hear naturally. We're used to tuning in sounds and tuning out various sounds, whereas the hearing aid picks up everything. So that experience informed how I worked with my mixer Candace on getting the sound right, And I love that you said it doesn't sound like a heartbeat. Rather it gave like someone's blood is rushing in their ears. That's exactly what it sort of feels like, like you're picking up on everything. If someone lifts a cup off the table, or whatever sound is in the space, the hearing aid is capturing everything, So that experience of hearing Angel's hearing aid and being able to like kind of get that firsthand really informed how we move forward with the entire creative process. So without having deaf folks on set and hard of hearing folks on set, it would not have been as immersive of a film, in my opinion. So,
Well, I'm calling it because, ladies and gentlemen, this is a film that you better keep your eye on in 2026 because
thank
I
you.
feel that this film is going to go a long way, and it's only January, so
It's only January.
I
We have the
know it.
whole year.
Well, for you, Mackay, what has been
Mhm.
the audience's reaction to this film, and what would you like the audiences to take away after seeing it?
Mm. It's a great question. The audience reaction has always been really universal in that grief is a universal feeling, and love is a universal feeling. And I love that folks are, finding empathy in the deaf experience, but also people are opening their hearts to me, telling me about their relationships with their dads and their families, and being an artist, so there's a universal like facet to people's response to it. I find that I hear the same things kind of said differently from everyone, whether people are talking about their relationships to their family, their relationship to their art, their knowledge of the deaf experience or lack of knowledge of the deaf experience, and sort of what they take away from it is usually very personal, but very, very, all encompassing. Like people are all experiencing the same things. We're not talking to each other about it. So I really like the communal sort of experience that I've had with this film. Like people are very, very open to telling me about their own personal experiences, and that has been really wonderful. And I like to see people's heart. People aren't very vulnerable when they first meet you, and they'll watch a film like this and open up like a book. So that's been really beautiful. And I think what I want people to take away It's just that. It's just that. Everything I've said about being in community, about being reminded of folks who are actually going to show up for you, and being surprised often at what they look like, who they are, um, you can't expect to know what impact someone will have on your life. And that experience is something I had with my dad, with my mom, with my family at large. And it's in making this and sort of turning this grief that I had with my grandmother into something I can share with the world. I've had a really, really enlightening experience. I feel like I've been awakened to how to connect to people, how to sort of use something like the film medium or my directing and my artistry to be able to like remove the masks from myself and from folks. And so I want people to walk away from this film feeling like they can trust the world a little more, feel a little lighter, especially in wake of everything we're dealing with. I want folks to feel like there's someone you can lean on out there, and they just feel a little less alone. So,
Well, the other thing that I love about this film, and I'm seeing more and more every year, and 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 they become some of my favorite films.
mm,
I love the fact that you bring forth a disability like deafness, which in this case with Drea, it is her superpower. Um,
hmm
because I see films of neurodivergence and autism and so many different things, and people don't understand. You know, when you and I know, but the general public doesn't understand that when they hear the word diversity, the only thing they think of is they just think of color, they
hmm
think of gender and sexuality, but they don't understand that diversity also encompasses those that have to overcome things that
hmm
most people don't. And so you bring forth this element in this film, and I want to thank you for that because even right now, leading up to the 2026 Oscars, one of the Oscar
hmm
shortlisted films is with a deaf character. And you bring
mm.
a whole new element. So I'm keeping my eye on them. That's not
Thank
Mackay,
you.
because I can see this film really going possibly all the way. And I cannot
Let's hope.
believe
Let's
here it
hope.
is so early, and you're already
Yeah, long
eligible
road
for
ahead. Yeah.
2027 Academy Awards. That'll be the 99th Academy Awards.
Yeah, yeah, it will be. It will be. I appreciate everything you've said, and yeah, that it means the world that something so personal is touching so many people. So I'm really
It
happy to hear that.
Well, it is. And ladies and gentlemen, Them That's Not is a beautiful film in every way. The storyline of a father and daughter reconnecting, but hidden within their estranged relationship, a secret connection is revealed. This film is a filmmaker's dream. And what I mean by that is that the story is told with incredible patience and outstanding visuals. The cinematography places a central role in this film with the correct framing of the characters that emphasizes their emotions and dialogue. And as I said, the color palette brings forth the warmth of home and family and of course love. And the use of sign language keeps the audience focused as if we lean in to hear a whisper, we can be transported into the lives of Drea, Carol, and Samuel. And I can see why this film is already Oscar qualified so early in its journey to the 2027 Academy Awards. And what a joy it is for me to kick off this year with such an incredible short film. And Mackay, thank you, brother, for giving me the honor to be the
Thank
first one
you.
to
Thank
interview
you.
you, watch the film,
Yeah.
and really take a deep dive into your filmmaking process.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, Ward. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very, very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're going out to all the film festivals this year and Them That's Not is there, make sure you are sitting in the theater. Put your phone down, turn your phone off, and pay attention because this is a film that, even for me, brought a little bit of tears to my eyes. And make sure you
Ah,
watch. And
I'm
and for
so
all of you out
happy.
there that are up and coming filmmakers, use this film as a lesson to improve your
Mhm.
overall craft because there's things in this film you can learn from. And Mekhai, I can already tell he's already a perfect teacher. And I can't wait to see what you do next.
Oh, me either. I'm looking forward to it.
Well,
But yes,
you got a big fan right here.
I appreciate that, Ward. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you, and I love this interview. You asked the best questions, so thank you.
You're very, very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, you can watch or listen to all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, even on Spotify, iTunes, and more. And remember, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.